As the financial year draws to a close, there's a new job for Australian businesses, taking over from the government as paymaster of its paid parental leave scheme. The scheme now entitles employees to 18 weeks paid leave at the minimum weekly wage. So how should businesses be preparing for this extra bit of red tape? Well, I'm joined now by Alison Baker from lawyers Hill and Wilcox. Alison, welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Tiki.
Well, first look, I see from the Pulse survey done recently that business is actually not looking forward to this role of new paymaster. 68% think Centrelink should be doing it. Just how prepared are our businesses?
I think there's a mixture. Some organisations have really acted quite positively as a result of it and have taken steps to get their systems in place. In fact, some even opted in to provide the payments during this 6-month transitional period. But there are other businesses who do think it's going to be a burden on them and who haven't acted yet to get their systems in place.
Presumably it's the smaller businesses that it's more of a challenge for. What sort of things do they have to do? I mean, it must involve potentially changes of policies, HR and their software.
Yeah, it does. So first of all, your payroll person or HR needs to understand what the business's obligations are. Also, you need to ensure you've got your payroll systems in place so that when you do get a tap on the shoulder from the Family Assistance Office to say that you need to administer the payment to your staff, you're ready to do that. And also just understand what your obligations are ongoing once you have a staff member who's on parental leave. So things like if you make the payment, then within 24 hours you have to give them a pay slip representing that, and also employers have to keep records of the payments they're making for 7 years. So
Now, many firms already have some sort of maternity benefit scheme in place. Many of them fund them themselves. How does this work? Does this scheme override those benefits?
It doesn't. It should act complementary to the benefits, and the government's been quite clear about the fact that they intended their scheme to complement any employer-funded parental leave payment. So certainly if an employer has an agreement in place where they set out that they'll make a payment for someone who's on parental leave, or it's in an employment contract, then they have to ensure that they still comply with those obligations in addition to the government's scheme.
But if it's discretionary, they might actually pull it down a bit now that the government is tipping in a little bit as well.
Yeah, plenty of clients we've dealt with have said, do we have a discretionary scheme? Could we look at whether we offset the government payment against our scheme? And I would say, get legal advice on that before you actually do it, because in most cases, even though if it's in a policy, there might be an argument to say it's a contractual entitlement for the employee. So unless
it sounds like guys like you are going to, you've got quite a lot of new business on your hands.
Look, I think it's initial burden for employers to set up the system and ask a few questions and understand what their obligations are and ensure they're not doing anything that's contrary to their contractual obligations. But once they get over those hurdles, I think it'll be a system that they can manage. Certainly at the start there's work to do, but once they have their systems in place, I think it will be manageable for them.
This applies to all long-term employees. How is that defined?
So the employer is only brought into the system for those employees that have been with them for 12 or more months service. So if you have someone who's been with you for less than 12 months, you won't be responsible for administering the payments to them.
And if a business falls foul of the scheme?
If they fall foul of the scheme, the Fair Work ombudsman has powers to come into the workplace and investigate, and they can do things like issue compliance notices. And if a business is seriously in breach of the Act and doesn't comply with compliance notices, then they could be prosecuted.
Let me come back to this issue of red tape. Why did the government do this to business? Was this to cut down their own bureaucratic work?
They say no. They went through sort of a 2-year consultation period before they introduced the legislation. The Productivity Commission looked at whether or not we needed a government-funded scheme, and the outcome or the findings were that there was a scheme that was needed, and they relied on research to say that if an employer is responsible for making the payment to the employee while they're on leave, they feel more connected to the workforce than if they were just getting a payment from the government.
Even if it's not employer-funded?
even if it's not employer funded, that's the premise behind requiring employers to do it, and it's with the hope that you will get your talented staff to come back to work after they've had parental leave.
One respondent in the Pulse survey, I'll quote it, says, "My firm will reduce the number of women as this is a huge additional cost with little or no benefit to the firm to have staff away for so long and no guarantee that they'll return to work." Is that a possibility?
Well, employees have been entitled to unpaid leave, and that still exists. They're entitled to unpaid 12 months parental leave. So that burden is there, I think, in any event. I'm not sure that giving people 18 weeks parental leave pay will have that sort of impact. They're already entitled to take parental leave.
Well, let's hope it also opens up a lot more flexible thinking in the workplace. Alison Baker, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.